Austin Brown is an online fitness and elite physique coach helping bodybuilders earn pro cards and lifestyle clients get in the best shape of their lives. His coaching brand, as you can see behind him, is Distinguished Training and Nutrition. Austin's been coaching for over a decade, bodybuilding for even longer, and recently got third at the Arnold Classic Amateur as a heavyweight. He's also a co-host on the One More Rep podcast with my good friend Joseph Pircher, one of the best bodybuilding podcasts which I listen to for every episode. Welcome to the show, Austin.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I'm
Of
excited to
course.
have a good conversation.
Yeah, yeah. So I've listened to you a lot, and I think you have amazing perspectives. I think it's so cool that you self-coach, but you also coach a lot of top guys, um, and you really care, and you're very knowledgeable. So I'm excited to have you on. Um,
Thank
for
you.
for folks who don't know you, give us some of your background. Like, how did you first get into bodybuilding? When did you first start lifting weights and getting in the gym? And we can go from there.
Yeah, cool. No, I always love this question because it's been a long time, so it makes me think about it all and kind of revisit that time period, which is fun. I played sports like very competitively all through high school and things, and then I ended up going to a small school to play football, and I was like a bigger linebacker. I was like 245, but it was like different, right? It was, fluffier, just big and strong, and then
Chunky.
yeah, it was like football big, and
Yeah.
yeah, so but I was strong as an ox, and did that whole thing, and then I got injured, and you know, I that I like had my wrist in a cast, so
Hmm.
at that point I was like big and kind of uncomfortable and all this, and then I was injured for the rest of the year, and then I like just started kind of delving into like how to lose the weight myself. I was like I put on some weight going to school and stuff, and I got really like infatuated with like nutrition and how it all worked, and like I really dove into that and like kind of put myself through a dieting phase and got in pretty good shape. And then like randomly I'm at the gym and, like I'd cut down to like 170 pounds, like really lean, and at that point like I was an exercise science major in college, so
Hmm.
I was like really into reading like clinical research and getting into like all of that, and I started delving into the training side of it too, and that's kind of how it all took off from a bodybuilding perspective. But I had a random guy just like ask me if I was competing in a show like that summer, and I was like, I didn't really know what that was.
Yeah.
Like I had seen some early YouTube stuff back then, and kind of like started to learn about what it was. And he taught me into doing it, and that was in 2012. So,
Wow.
or sorry, 14. That was in 14. So yeah, I went to college in 12 and then did that show in 14. So that was my first one. And it kind of all just, built on that. And, here we are, a decade later, and it's to where it is now. So that's, that's how that all happened. With the coaching thing, it just, like I always coached myself for those shows and things like that. And then I prepped a few buddies, and like, I ended up, finishing school and got into the corporate world to work in like a finance role out of college for like 5 years. And I always kept like a small roster of people that I just kind of inevitably picked up over time. And I was still doing the competitive things, myself and all of that. And then that bill, and I always kept that small roster. And then in 2021 I just made the decision, like the corporate kind of life had been kind of toying with me for a while, like I just wasn't super fulfilled and happy and stuff. And that's when I kind of took the leap and got into the coaching thing full time, and I did some stuff to you know subsidize income in the meantime until the roster got big enough to where I felt like I could, go out on my own. And that was kind of ended up doing that in like 2022. So since then it's been, full blown, and now we're, now it's where it's at now. So
That's really cool. Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of the whole thing, so
And how many shows have you done?
man, I think I was reading that, and I have to count, but I'm pretty positive it's 17 I've done.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I
since
thought
20,
you were going to say like 5 or 7.
17, man. So it's, yeah, I've been very actively competing throughout that entire decade. I've taken a
Wow.
couple years off here and there. But yeah, so a lot of shows. And then I was like in classic physique, I was like, doing the national circuit, chase the pro card thing for like 3 years. And that ended
Wow.
up racking up a lot of those, shows. It was multiple shows throughout that kind of classic circuit that runs close together there.
Yeah. So
Between
you do like junior nats, then universe, then North Americans or something?
Universe, yeah, Junior Nats, and then Junior USA was always the first one.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of guys doing those three. It's interesting.
Yeah, logistically, it just it's really nice for classic guys. Bodybuilders don't have that nice lineup like that. You can
Yeah.
get in shape as a classic guy and hold it for 6 weeks and get like multiple shots, which is really.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I should do that next time.
The first time I did a national show, I just did the one, and
Yeah.
like, ended up first call out, and like that's all I had planned,
Yeah.
like it would have been great to keep going, and
Yeah.
get another look, but I'd already shut it down and everything. So like the year after, that's when I like planned that out to like, okay, I'm gonna give myself a chance to show up a couple times if I need to.
Yeah. I think I need to build up to it. I'm glad I didn't. My wife would kill me if I said I was doing 3 national shows in a year.
That's the thing too. It's like you have to be like pretty much fully matured as an athlete to like take on something like that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of and those things you can't rush. So it's kind of like it's good to take it one thing at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. Um, and who were some of your early influences as a bodybuilder and then as a coach as well?
You know, I was thinking about that, and it's never something I've put a lot of thought into, but like I was talking about the early YouTube guys, right? And like I got like that was like 2012, like the very just origins of it all happening with social media and YouTube. And like I remember like watching like the bodybuilding.com, right? That was big. That's where you got all your supplements. They had the free workout plans and all of that. So I remember like coming across Chris Gethin on there. Um,
Cool.
yeah. So and I started following him on
Old
YouTube.
school.
And super old school. Yeah, the gas thing, and I like really loved that mood of like those guys, and then he had YouTube channels training with like Johnny and Branch and all that. So like that's kind of like the origins of how I kind of discovered it all, and then I like basically just dove into like bodybuilding history and everything, and kind of like got really into like those 90s guys in that era. And that was kind of like what I felt like I resonated with the most. That gave me like I've drawn a lot of inspiration from. But like I made it a point, like, I feel like a lot of people do this, but like when I got into the sport, like I learned everything I could about it. I went way back to the first Olympias and like how'd this even start, right? And,
That's
like,
so cool.
yeah, just like became like a mini historian on it, right? Like
Yeah.
I think it's important to know the things that like led up to what it is now. So that I remember doing a lot of that. So bodybuilding wise, like that era definitely was like kind of always my main motivation. Even though like I had major like imposter syndrome, and like I did men's physique forever, and then it was like, okay, I'm big enough to try classic, and it's like, why didn't I just go full blown from like to be a super heavyweight on stage next year? And I'm like, oh, I wish I would just adapted that mindset a little earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how people like graduate up the classes very slowly these
Yeah,
days. Because back in the day you couldn't do that.
right, yeah. You know, so thinking more on that too, like I was really into like the natural bodybuilding scene for a long time, because that was my mindset. It was like I'm gonna just, I did that for the first like 3 years mostly,
Okay.
4 years. So like I really dove into like some of the top coaches in that realm. So like I remember like Jeff Alberts and like the 3DMJ guys, and like
Yeah.
really following that whole gang really closely, and Eric Helms and all of them, because like that's where I learned like a lot of about all this stuff is like how does it work on a natural physique, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the important stuff. And then now we get into the advancements and all of these extra tools that are great, but like if you don't know that stuff, so I'm glad I have those roots of like doing it naturally and achieving
Yeah.
extreme conditioning naturally. And it's some of these people don't think that's even possible. It's like it all works the same. We just get
Yeah.
to expedite the process a little bit with the
Very
PD.
similar. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Alberto Nunez. I still watch a lot of his stuff, and
Huge fan, dude.
Cliff Wilson too. I think
Yes.
some of the stuff he does is so cool.
I mean, those guys are incredible, right?
Yeah.
They're doing a 50-week prep diet and, getting just diced to the bone. Like I mean, it's different. It's different stuff. It's really, really impressive.
Yeah. I couldn't do it. It just seemed like you just like crush yourself for four
For what?
years. You can't compete every year, and then you're like, I hope I gain 2 pounds of muscle.
Yeah, I hope I get it just a little bit here and there. Yeah, man, it's different. So, I did that for a long time, and then it was finally like, okay, exactly what we're talking about. It's like if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, right? So,
Yeah. And what went into this decision to self-coach? Like, not a lot of people do that these days, but you seem to have a lot of success with it, and it seems like you really enjoy it and learn a lot from it.
yeah, I think it's just what I enjoy most about bodybuilding is like how the inputs equal an output, and like I'm a control freak, so like myself, like having control of these inputs and seeing the outputs, like that's what I enjoy about this stuff. So, um, you know, I think it's just kind of like a science experiment and it's a lot of fun, really. So like
Yeah.
that's always, it's just always given me a lot of, it's always been enjoyable for me. Like I find it as like a hobby essentially. But like I'm my own, project. It's enjoyable. So I've always, and then just applying things like on myself that maybe I wouldn't necessarily want to with someone, or experimenting on myself first. Like I will never deploy a protocol and that has any type of risk behind it without like going through it myself and understanding it, and things like that. So like I've always enjoyed the flexibility there with coaching myself. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is just the enjoyment I get from doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love learning. I'm a huge nerd for this stuff. I know way too much about it and invest way too much time in it for someone who doesn't make a living from it.
Yeah,
Uh,
but it's I mean there's so many, one question leads to 15 others, and then
yeah.
before you know it, it's, and you can really never stop learning enough about it, and that's the awesome thing about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just remembering, thinking back to you talking about the 90s guys. So like I wasn't following bodybuilding up until a few years ago. And it was so cool in prep last year. I have this thing where when I do cardio, I can't like listen to podcasts. I have to watch training videos for some reason. And I just went back and watched like all of Jay and Phil and a bunch of Maryland Muscle Machine
Yeah,
with Kevin Liveroni. Like,
DVDs on YouTube, man, it's
yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah. I love watching that stuff. Um, cool. And one thing that I found super interesting is a lot of your talks on the One More Rep podcast with Joseph about peaking yourself. Can you talk about like how you think about peaking, some of the things you've learned, experiments you've run, and then also how you apply it to athletes too?
Yeah, so man, you hear this answer a lot, right? But it's so individual.
Yeah.
It is truly is, and like that is something I've learned a lot this year, even more, and just gaining more experience with different types of humans. But but there I'll say there's like types, like as a general kind of sector that people fall in. Like not everyone's like extremely unique. Like they're either like this body type or this body type or this body type. And I'll say this about peaking too is like it depends on what canvas you're working with. Is it a completely blank canvas? Is the person completely fat free? Do you have control over all variables here because the canvas is a clean slate essentially? That's the only body that can be like truly peaked, maximized in my opinion, is like someone who's fat free. Um, but so the way you go about, like the way I go about peaking is very much so dependent on like how good of shape is the person in. And that's going to be division dependent too, obviously, because typically the more in shape someone is, the more metabolically efficient they are, and therefore depleted. So like that peak is going to look a lot different than someone who's in great shape and really good to get on stage, but like it's just good enough, right? That I'm going to take a different approach with that. So, like for me, peaking, like for myself personally, is very interesting because my body does like kind of take off metabolically, and I have a couple athletes that are exactly like me, and it's very enjoyable because I'm like, you're very easy to peak because like I'm that they fall in that same silo of
Yeah.
right. So like for me, it's gonna be like I'm gonna be very aggressive, like with someone who like is my kind of body type, gets very conditioned. It's like because you're gonna see a very good visual change with every input with that canvas. So like I'm gonna push that conditioning without knowing how metabolically efficient they are. Like I'm always going to attempt to find a point about like somewhere around 24 to 36 hours out where like that physique is starting to be like overfed, essentially, and visuals start to skew in a negative manner, because predictably we can come back down into a deficit approach where food is basically almost nothing, to clean that spill off, and just their metabolic efficiency at that rate. But usually in that time window, it's going to take that spill and put them somewhere in that fill range of like, to be safe, 85 to 99% of the way filled up. And even if we're slightly spilled over that morning, some movement or additional pumping up, or there can be plenty of strategies to deploy. But like that's what I like, to be able to like have a good handle and buffer to like go one way or the other with it. Like that clean off day I'm talking about, it almost can act as a swing day if someone is really burning through food and they like dried that spill off overnight and they actually woke up flat. Like, okay, now we have a swing day to continue this process. Or it's like, okay, we woke up full as a tick, vision or lines are still a little blurred. We're going to go low here and we're going to monitor the visuals throughout the day as we quote unquote dry out or clean that spill up, right? So that's like the ideal peak for me. Fluids with that would stay relatively high throughout that whole thing. Sodium would come down on the low day, and it would basically correlate with the carbohydrate intake. More carbs coming in, more sodium coming in, even so a little bit more water coming in. Water's still high on that low day. Sodium's lower to pair with the food. And like I'm taking like a protein basically only approach, maybe some fats and like vegetables in that day so that digestion stays intact. I don't ever believe in like pulling all fiber like 2 days out and things like that. It's asking to be constipated on stage. But yeah, I mean that's one approach, right? But there's 20 others we could go into and type and like it's kind of like, where are we starting at 7 to 10 days out, or did I push the individual to 3 days out? Where's this canvas, and like where do we go from there?
It's similar to what I did last year. I think the only exception is I'd love to understand like how high your food had to get to load for your last show. I know you talked about it on the One More Rep podcast. And then I'd love to understand how you think about like carbs and fats, like loading with just carbs or mixing the two for yourself at least. Let's just focus on yourself.
Yeah. So I do like a pretty there is a positive correlation with carbs coming up and fats coming up as well. I would put it at a ratio of maybe like, I don't know, 10 to 1 or something like that. Okay. But so for protein in that instance is going to stay like very, very low. Like I'm talking, if I'm 225, I might eat 150 to 175 grams of protein during a true loading day. It'll be in the diet, but not much. Like 2-ounce portions of protein and like trace protein from carbs. Like I'm hardly eating protein in this. But like for me, like if I'm starting at a blank canvas of like truly depleted and starting a load, like it typically takes anywhere from like 12 to 1,500 carbs, and then like around like 200 to 400 grams of fat typically, and then that protein pretty low, like I was saying,
per day.
Yeah, and I can do like 1 day of that, sometimes 2. Usually if I'm going to take that strict of an approach, it'll be a 2-day situation, Wednesday, Thursday, low day Friday, on the money Saturday. Sometimes I will, for me personally, I will make that a 1-day process, and I will basically eat that macronutrient allotment and then have a meal of the evening that is untracked, that is in that carb to fat ratios pretty much, and just eat until I'm visually looking rather terrible. Like I know what spilled looks on me, and
Yeah.
the pressure in the muscle is extreme, and we talk. This is all feedback that I'm asking athletes and verbiage that I'm using with them that sometimes can be hard to understand. But just like understanding pressure is like one thing you can gauge massively for how full someone is. Vascularity, and then certain body parts are going to look dynamite, right? While others are going to look off, like maybe the stomach. Like for me, my stomach gets extremely distended. The vascularity top to bottom is crazy, but the lines are completely gone. They've spilled over and lost that depth of the lines. Parts I have that gauge, and I will basically eat that meal until that's achieved, and it typically is like me eating until I can't eat, and then
Wow.
I'll go to sleep and clean that off on the next day and eat maybe 1,000 calories that day and drink 2 gallons of water. And I will push some diuresis that day with like stimulant intake, just to really keep diuresis moving. And typically telmisartan is increased like during that period of time
Okay.
too. Um, that hardly ever, if it's someone like that who like has the ability to be dry and is truly lean, is a diuretic would ever be used. So I don't ever typically deploy anything other than like natural diuresis with that process.
Interesting. Yeah, for me, it was like I didn't really use fats last year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I
Was it? Did you find it like you were blowing through the food doing that?
yeah, I mean, I just like my stomach is so sensitive to fats.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
eat super low fat all year round now. It's funny because I did the carnivore diet for 3 years where
Oh wow.
I ate a ton of fat. But I find, especially with high food, having like anything above like 70 grams of fat a day, it just really slows down my digestion and makes it hard to get through high amounts of food. And so this last year, I think we did 5 or 6 straight days of 1,000 grams of carbs.
Yep.
And then the day before, just like you said, was pretty low. It was probably like 300 grams of carbs.
Perfect.
Limited water. Um, I don't know exactly what we did with sodium. And then like the night before, we did a burger and fries which was awful because I ate like Five Guys large fry with no water. That was
You must had flattened out pretty good going into
yeah.
Friday night then.
Yeah, yeah, and I woke up crispy and like probably flat the next Saturday morning.
But probably in that 80-ish range where it
Yeah,
was really good, really
yeah,
good. And then that's the perfect spot to wake up, in my opinion. And then I call these like call them like pacifier meals. Like have 2 meals to just hydrate and give you the pop back going into the
yeah,
showtime. Small, easy digestible. Just something to hold that look that you woke up with, but bring it to life just a little bit. That's ideal.
yeah. It's going to be interesting this year because at least I don't know when I'm weighing in for my local show, but for the North Americans, it's like weigh-ins are from like 4 to 8 p.m. the night before, and then prejudging starts at 8 a.m. The next day.
Dude, I really wish they would make that a 2 day out situation.
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
ran into that with my classic guy at Masters Nationals. Like we were sucking down hard. We weighed in at 7:30 p.m. or something, and then on stage at 9 a.m. or something. So it made it. We didn't sleep. We just stayed up and we ate about 100 to 200 carbs every hour on the hour
wow.
until like 7 a.m.
Yeah, it's going to be a long night.
Yeah, I was like, we're already up, man. Let's just rock it
Yeah.
out.
Wow, that's crazy. It's super interesting. And then one thing that I think is really cool is hearing you talk about and seeing you post a lot on your Instagram about training. Seems like you really love training and you've found a system that works really well for you and you've really dialed it in. But I'm curious, like, what are some of your training philosophies and how have those evolved over time too?
Yeah, like so for me, like the one word that comes to mind when I think training is accuracy. And like understanding like where the individual is as a bodybuilder and how accurate they are at their training. So once we master like training accuracy, the amount of volume we require is infinitely lower, in my opinion. Because once you understand how to achieve a stimulus, that's all that needs to be done. But for someone who is less accurate with their training, more volume is going to have to be allocated to achieve that same stimulus as someone who has kind of mastered their training. So like I do believe in like you could say I believe in like a low volume approach, but that's not everyone on my roster. It just depends on where that athlete is with their training maturity, essentially. And you know, I definitely believe in like a very low volume approach, but then like that volume is going to be paired with, you know, where are they at and what phase of the year it is. So, like my general philosophy with training is like train as much as you can recover from, with extreme intent and accuracy. That's something I'm preaching all the time with like execution, but like paired with extreme intensity. Like that's how I have all my guys train. I don't do like RPE or RR training. I just have people achieve failure on as much volume as they can handle at the time, depending on what tools are available, and then pair and then coming up with how to program that individual based on how good they are at training at the time, and that changes for someone throughout their years, and then obviously the phases are going to change and what recoverability tools are available. So I don't have like a general philosophy. It's just kind of like taking all of those inputs and then coming up with it. But like for me personally, or a high level advanced guy like that's kind of like on my level of training, like it is a lower volume approach, just with a huge emphasis on intention and execution, and then most of all intensity, but with intention and execution being above intensity on the hierarchy of things we need to put stock into.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people can get more out of less with training, especially when you're really like focused. I think
Focus, man.
once you meet the threshold of intensity, you know how to train intensely. Like you don't need more intensity. You need focus and like you said, accuracy.
I love that word focus. Like your set, it begins far before you're moving any load. Your mind needs to get into a position where you're like ready to go do the hardest thing you've ever done in your life. Like how you would think before you're about to walk into the biggest interview of your life. Like you need that level of lock the fuck in before you hit the set. And then you're gonna hit so much more out of that set. Like every single rep should be beneficial. It shouldn't take you 6 reps as a prerequisite to like feel like you're doing something.
Yeah.
Move the
Yeah.
be in control of that load throughout the entire range. Like literally become part of the movement is how I try to like envision myself. Like a literal gun could go off next to me during a set of squats, and like I will not stop.
Yeah, I can tell by watching you train. Yeah, and I think it like plays on itself too because when you are that focused, you don't need as much volume, and if you were to add more volume, you wouldn't be able to be as focused, right? So it's like it plays into itself in a way.
Yeah, I mean, if that's a great way to teach someone to train with intensity is say, hey, you have one set on all your movements today. And they're
Yeah,
like, what? Like, I need so much more than that. It's like, well, make it count. Like,
yeah,
die. Over this. Like,
yeah.
wring the towel out until every single, every drop is gone on every single one of these. And then talk to me and we'll go from there.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't warm up properly for each movement too. Like especially later in the workout. Yes, your muscles are warm, but like you need to get yourself neurologically primed for that particular movement. Especially
Yeah.
to
And the
create
way, yeah, yeah, no, for sure, and especially, and it's. I think it's mostly the way people treat their warm up sets when they do them, right?
Mhm.
Like, and I talk to everyone about this, all my guys and girls. Like those warm up sets should be with the same exact tempo and execution and intensity as your top set. To again, like you said, just to create that neurological adaptation and connection, right? So you have to have that going into a set, or you're shooting yourself in the foot, and you're also going to cause like more risk of injury there too, right?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, it's I've been working with Danny Martina for training the last month or two, and I know she's working with Tommy Styles. He's gotten a lot out of working with her, and you can see it in his training how it's changed too. How much he gets out of every movement and every set and every rep. It's really like it's so cool. It gets me so excited because it makes me feel like I have so much room to improve and like so much more I can get out of training.
Yeah, man. I mean, I harp on training, all the time, because without it, nothing else we do matters, like whatsoever. Like without that stimulus, nothing else matters. Like yes, you will grow muscles on steroids without doing anything, but it's the beginning domino of everything we do.
Yeah.
So like you better put a lot of focus and intent and stock into that piece of like your bodybuilding, because it in essence when people ask what's the most important thing, it's all equally important, but without the training none of it matters. So it could make the argument that it is the most important thing that we do.
Yeah. And I think you're the perfect person to ask this question now that I know that you've competed 17 times. But how do you think about getting better from one prep to the next season? Like, where do you start, either with yourself or with a client? And maybe you can talk about some of the things you did wrong. Like you mentioned, wishing you had gone straight to focusing on, super heavyweight bodybuilding. But like, what, what what mistakes have you made? What do you think is the right way to, make sure you're leveling up from show to show or from season to season?
Yeah, I think the biggest guide there is going to be the visuals, but obviously pairing that with certain data points goes a long way. So, um, as a blanket statement, you could say that you want to see a higher scale weight, but that's not always the case, because someone may have achieved a higher scale weight at some point with a unfavorable body composition. But achieving a new scale weight like with a favorable composition is obviously something like that we would want to look for if it's a comparable top off-season composition compared to the last season, and we would like to see that scale weight moving up. That's one data point. And then just being progressive with the other pieces of your bodybuilding, like you can make some what do you want to call them, predictions. If we have been progressive with past androgen use, maybe we've utilized different androgens or anabolic pathways with introductions of things. We can make a prediction that this person, if they did more of this and then maybe they got better at training this year, we can make that prediction. But then we obviously always pair these things back to the visuals and comparing over time. So I'm always going to be looking back at like end of growth phases from the previous season and kind of comparing, like that's going to be your best guide. And then you can do that throughout the prep, as well as like check marks, like okay, you went from the end of their off season, maybe that was 24 weeks out, and then you're looking at visuals 16 weeks out and 12 weeks out, and like you will start to see if there's been notable improvement or not. And then in that case, like you can treat that if say you run into the situation where you don't feel like there's notable improvements and they're not someone who is coming in at the top of a weight class or something like that, it's okay for you guys just to basically refine the look. You have that conversation of maybe going the other direction again. It's just treating that beginning of prep like a recomp or resensitization phase of just probably what you were going to be doing in that time period anyway, or what I would be doing with an individual during that post growth phase is like going ahead and pulling some of that fat off and resensitizing their insulin sensitivity, getting their appetite back in check, getting the gut back in check, doing some things that way. So say you ran into that, you could do that. But those are kind of the ways I'm ensuring that people are moving in an upward direction year to year, is kind of putting all of that information and making that decision together.
And let's say you finish a prep, or you can even talk about you finishing your Arnold's prep. What what's the general plan you lay out for yourself? Like, how do you
Yeah.
think about what am I going to do with nutrition? How much am I going to bring my weight up initially or later? Um, and what adjustments do you make?
Yeah, so there's some considerations in this case, but like for me personally, for the Arnold prep, it was an 8 week prep. So like I had only been on an escalated androgen load for 8 weeks. So in that is a short amount of time
Yeah,
typically for me. So in that case, I planned or I chose to utilize a bit of a rebound period of higher androgens. Um, and get food escalated up pretty quick due to my body type and understanding like how that I respond to that personally. Like I can fill out rather quickly and not put on an immense amount of fat, and stay very insulin sensitive. And I know I can clean up any errors that way relatively quick. But it all, say it's like a full prep for someone. We've been on escalated androgens for maybe 20 weeks or something like that. I'm going to just like let the food do the work after that and come down to like a mostly maintenance level androgen load. Androgen, we have to understand androgens from the prep are still going to be saturated for a solid like 3 to 5 weeks after that. So like just bringing food up and getting rid of the prep down regulations with sleep and things like that, we're going to see performance skyrocket anyway on that lower androgen load. And for that individual, like I do want to keep it tighter during that period, so I then do still have a nice runway for when we get the lab work back. We've addressed any red flags, and maybe that's 6 to 8 weeks post show. We've pulled out some really good progress just from the maintenance level androgens and letting food come up and getting sleep fixed and things like that. Now I have a clean slate and a nice runway to like bring androgens back up and have a runway to grow from, versus if I'd aggressively push food over that 8 weeks. Now I'm starting someone on a high androgen load and they're fat. Like I will always start someone off in a very favorable body composition, ideally for a growth phase. There was another point I was going to make on that, but that's kind of how I like to treat the post show period, typically.
yeah, yeah. It makes a lot of sense. And what are your goals for yourself for the next year? Like, are you already eyeing the next set of shows, or what are you thinking?
Man, I did the Arnold as a heavyweight, so I just that 2024 was my first year as an open bodybuilder.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the very end of 2024, and I still had the like crazy imposter syndrome of like, can I even do this? And then like I got down to like a prep low of like 215, but I got on stage at 225 because I basically did like a 3 week peak into the show where because I was in shape so early, I just basically reverse dieted into the show,
Yeah.
and maintained that same conditioning. So now I'm 225, which is the top of heavyweights. I do that show. I have a nice rebound after that or post show period and made some really good progress because I did utilize a higher androgen load during that phase as well. Um, it before the Arnold, and then I came down to in a health phase for like 6 weeks, and then that's when I made the determination and decision to do the Arnold. So, yeah, I mean, that's plan wise. You know, I looked, I did the Arnold, got third, heavyweight. The frame is just so big. I needed to grow still. So, I'm taking a growth phase right now. I'm gonna probably do that twice, and my hope is to be around like every bit of like 240 and do something at the end of 2026. So probably try to qualify for the nationals and make a go at that around hopefully that 240, 245 range is my.
Awesome.
I'm hoping I can fit my 5'10" and a half frame will look moderately filled out by that point, because at 225 I was on stage at nearly 230 and I just still a lot of gaps just because I'm a larger frame.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm really excited to watch that. Yeah, you definitely belong as an open
Thanks, man.
bodybuilder. But that's really cool. I
Yeah.
think it'll be really exciting to watch. Switching gears a bit to coaching, talk about like how coaching has evolved for you, and how you've improved as a coach, and what gets you the most excited about coaching, what you get out of it.
And I think the most exciting part for me is like getting an individual who just like really, really wants this stuff and like cares about it at a really high level, because you become this like beautiful like two-headed dragon essentially, where like you're the same person and you're just, I'm the sticks and like you're the avatar, like I'm the brains, like, and you're just executing, and it becomes like a really nice chemistry when you guys like when the level of care is matched, and the goals are the same between client and coach. That's what I get the most out of, whether it be a growth phase where we're like really attacking like a serious amount of tissue and we're really trying to get big, or improve a body part is really fun. Obviously prep is a blast because you're just like you're in the trenches together. It's your prep together. I'm very big on like being there from a psychological standpoint with all my clients, and like because at the end of the day that is the most important part of bodybuilding and mastering bodybuilding is the mental space, and especially in a prep setting is one of the harder mental spaces to get very good at. So that's what I get the most out of it, man. Just being in it with them and just treating the goal as both, as the equal importance to both individuals, and just getting after it, whatever it may be. That's what gives me the most with it all, man. You ask about like learning or something with the coaching too before that. Yeah. I think right now the biggest thing for me is like I feel like my toolbox is really good, and like I have a nice. I don't feel like the need to learn a lot right now. I will never stop learning new things, but like my biggest thing that's giving me more skills as a coach right now is just simply like gaining a lot of just a lot of experience right now, just being in different situations and like traveling a lot this year and working with different individuals and different divisions, and that's what's like really leveling me up right now a lot, is just experience and just having a really nice roster now of like a lot of different types of individuals, a lot of like really talented individuals in different divisions, and just continuing to like work with them and get better as a team. I think that's my biggest thing right now. Obviously there's so much new cool stuff going on in bodybuilding right now, and people get a little bit of FOMO with all this stuff, coach, like what about this or that, and it's like that's great, but like I bring it back to me, I'm like, I want to look like a 90s bodybuilder. They didn't have any of this, Now, I'm not saying I don't leverage like new science and things like that. I absolutely do. And I love learning about that stuff on the side, but I don't put a ton of stock into it because I feel really good about like my toolbox as a coach and what I bring to the table. So, the experience thing right now is kind of all I've had time to like put a lot of stock into, but it's invaluable, and I'm very appreciative for how this season's gone and like where it's put me as a coach in comparison to where I was 6 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, the results speak for themselves, and you clearly have a deep passion for your clients and care a lot about them, and I can tell you love it. So that's really cool. I think that means so much more than like you obviously are very knowledgeable about a lot of different topics, training, PEDs, diet, but I would take a coach has some of that and extensive experience over a coach who is extremely smart and academic with very little experience any day, and I think most people would.
Yeah, man. I just always, it's the art of coaching, right? And all of these things matter to a great degree, but it's like any relationship is what skills and values does that person possess as like a whole, and like how does that equal an outcome, and that is the beauty of coaching, is there's so many different ways to go about it. But I do think just genuinely caring is if you're thinking about being a coach, like, do you genuinely care? Because at the end of the day, if you don't, this isn't a walk in the park. It's not an easy job like people may think. You're working a ton, and you have to really care about the individuals and treat their health as yours and treat their mind as yours, and like that's how you will get the results. Like it's just inevitable. If you put that level of care into them, they're going to see that, and the results will be much better than if you just send a plan and that's it.
Yeah, it's a hard job. You have to love it. You have to work really hard. I think I have thought about going headfirst into coaching before, to your earlier point about you making the switch, but I've invested so much in my career, and every time I look at, like, I love helping. I help a small roster of clients, and I get a lot out of it. But I think about what it would take to replace my income, and like just. I don't think I have that level of grind right now outside of my main job, you know?
And there's a lot of beauty in having the division as well.
Yeah.
There really is. So like that's something it took me a long time to get adjusted to, is bodybuilding only. But it's not bodybuilding only. It's like other people's bodybuilding only.
Yeah.
And then like yours is like actually a lot less thought about than whenever I was in your position. And it was me, and I had my objectives and I got them done. And then it was like Austin all day. You know, now I don't think about myself hardly ever.
Yeah. Yeah. You spend all day thinking about your clients.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Austin. This was awesome. I've learned a lot from you, and I think a lot of other people can too. Where can people find you? I'll have links to everything in the show notes, but where can people follow along with you?
Yeah, Instagram's my main thing that I'm mostly active on. I'm not massively active on social media, but I have my Instagram, which is Austin_Brown_DTN. And then like you have links to all my coaching inquiry forms there, my email, everything that way. You can always reach out to me in DMs. Yeah, and then find me over at the One More Rep podcast with Joseph, like Scott was saying. So every Monday.
Cool. Thanks, Austin.
Thank you so much for having me on, man. This was fun.
Of course. Hello, and welcome to the Scott Mize Show, a podcast focused on body and hormone optimization and improvement for anyone who's looking to get jacked, build muscle, lose fat, improve their hormones, feel better, or improve their health. Here, I interview experts in lab work, hormones, bodybuilding, coaches, bodybuilders, and everyday people and senior executives who have improved their hormones and improved their body. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Anything you hear should not be taken as medical advice. Please consult with your physician before making any changes to your diet, exercise, or supplementation protocols. This podcast is brought to you by Element Electrolytes. Element Lemonade is finally here. It's great for a hot summer day, workout, or just enjoying with a cold beverage at your desk. Check it out and get your free sample pack of their favorite flavors, along with any regular purchase when you use my custom link, which is drinklmnt.com/Scott Mize. The sample pack is great for anyone who's interested in trying their most popular flavors, or anyone who wants to introduce a friend to Element. Go to drinklmnt.com/Scott Mize to claim this awesome deal. Now on to the show.